Everyone. My name is Christine, and I'm here today with Kristen. And this is our 22nd episode of Walking the Path. So it's essentially where her and I come together and talk about what we're noticing, what we're sensing and feeling, and any themes arising in our life or in our work with other people that we wanted to present in this format. So I think we'll jump right in after a quick introduction that we each do. So how about we'll start with you, Kristen, if you want to introduce yourself or if there's anything you want to name about where you're at.
Thanks, Christine. I'm really glad to be here. And where to start? I mean, I realized it's been almost 2 years since we've recorded an episode of Walking the Path. It kind of took a back burner, I think, and we were both, off on our own individual paths doing all the things we've been doing. And right now I am in the interior of British Columbia. We just moved a couple of months ago, mostly as a result of the new reality that we've all been experiencing in 2020. And for now, we're in a cozy space. We're still just settling into this house. We were in a different one temporarily, and so really focusing on getting grounded and feeling that sense of home base and safety, security, comfort. It could be an interesting long winter ahead, and what am I up to? Just doing a lot of my own practices to stay grounded and well and vibrant. And I don't know what the new version of my life reality is going to look like moving forward, but I'm just really, really glad to be here with you today. And I'm really glad we got a chance to see each other in person this year, because it had been a long time since we actually got to laugh and hug and, talk about life off camera. So I'm really grateful to be here, reconnecting for some more episodes of Walking the Path, kind of sharing our personal experiences and some, insights and tidbits in this very bizarre, unprecedented time in our lifetimes. So thanks very much.
Yeah, and I'm grateful to be here with you. And I think everyone on my channel will know who I am, but it'll also be posted on Kristen's. And it's interesting because at the beginning of this year, well, actually last fall and into this year, my work really honed in on self-care. So it was self-care with Christine. And so my sessions were based in self-care. At the beginning of this year, I did 12 days of self-care and wrote blogs and did a few videos. And that was what I was invited to just really hone in on with people: mental, physical, emotional self-care. How do we care for the self? And then how can that care for the self translate into relationships and into the world, the bigger space. And then in about March, April, this new theme was arising of navigating transitions, which was actually my interest in 2009 when I first started doing life coaching, mentoring after my counseling degree. It was like, how do we navigate the transitions? Because so often there's ending and beginning, but it's like that in between time, the gap, the not knowing, the uncertainty, the instability, the I can't go back, but I can't move forward. And I feel like that's reflected in the times we're in. We can't go back, but we also don't feel like we can really step in and move forward and build and be with each other, because there's all these other forces or elements on the planet that are kind of orchestrating the direction or putting in place what they feel is best to keep everyone safe. And so it's just a really fascinating time. So I'm just so excited to be here with you exploring it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just looking at both of our smiles, and I'm just feeling so grateful that in a time that's been so incredibly challenging for most of us, in our own unique ways, that we're able to smile and, deliver these heart and soul messages that we feel we have to share with everyone. And so the theme that came for this first episode of 2020 is resilience practices. Everyday things that are super doable, that are infinitely valuable always. And I was sharing with you right before we started this recording that I'm grateful that I had the insight for the last decade to integrate different elements of daily life into my reality, so that I was kind of pre-trained, not to say that this has not been hard for me in the last, 8 months or however long it's been, but I was saying that a lot of people are going, how are you doing? And I'm saying, I'm hanging in there, I'm doing well, day to day, but I think I'm feeling more resilient than a lot of other people that I've been in contact with, friends and family worldwide. And so that led me to this morning on my yoga mat saying, wow, like, okay, how about we just talk about a few of the top key things each of us do, and incorporate, that have created a more grounded and resilient reality for us right now.
Cool.
Do you want
I love that theme. I would say one thing for me that is put in place every day is to really feel a part of the web of life, the whole of life. And I set the intention to honor, uplift, enrich, and enhance my life as a contribution to honoring, enhancing, enriching, uplifting all life, but really expanding out and acknowledging the earth, the air, the fire, water, ether, the trees, the earth, the cosmos, the greater universe. So I really acknowledge my belonging in the greater universe, my belonging in life itself, and also acknowledge my part in humanity as part of the human collective. So I'm simultaneously like moving through this transition with everyone else, but really, in addition to my humanity and being a human with a human life, I also expand to really acknowledge that I'm part of this greater universe and a greater process of evolution. And there's a lot going on here. And I can really, through a lot of spiritual practice or learning to unite my heart, body, mind through the field and frequency of love, I can bring in also silence when I require that. When I notice a lot of noise in the background, then I can call forth my response to that noise of silence. So I would say the two things, if I were to become a little more succinct with it, is one, to expand and acknowledge that I'm part of this web of life, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the birds, like everything, like I'm part of this huge web. So that is a bigger space of belonging. And I'm also part of this human collective and this process that we're going through as a species, you could say, this planetary evolution or this planetary transition. So I zoom in and zoom out, and I've really honed the ability to zoom in and zoom out. So I'd say that's a really big part of what keeps me sane, and also the breath and embodying the response, I call it. So if there's a lot of noise in the background, I can become the silence. I can become the space. I can become the energy that I would want to receive if I was feeling that. So if there's an angst in the field, I can be this space of peace and calm. If there's this noise and agitation, I can be this, silence, this stillness. Or if things are getting restricted and confined and constricted towards like a lack of life, or we call it more of a death field, then I can really expand and be the space of life, the dynamic field of living, of Shakti, of the essence of the feminine, the masculine, the mother, the creator, like such a bigger creation than the restriction based in what people from above feel like is the best choice for people's safety and preservation of life.
Thank you. Yeah, those are really great points. And I would say that's a sort of a natural part of the fabric of my daily reality as well. And I know for me, consistency in the practices is really key, and so I try to do some form of yogic practices. That's been a really big pillar in my life since 2003. And it's been like an anchor that's brought me back to center whenever life gets stormy. And so, when we did our yoga teacher training a few years ago, they said, at the very least, have a daily minimum practice so that no matter what, you have no excuse to not take 10 or 15 minutes out of 24 hours. And you stop and you pause and you do these practices, and it's better than nothing. So I'd like to suggest that. I try to do more than a daily minimum practice most days. And honestly, one of the greatest gifts out of 2020 for me has been having way more time to do those practices, to do my breathing practices, my, asana postures on my mat, my meditation. And then, I think probably since we recorded last, a new path for me has been Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of devotion, and it's largely known through chanting or kirtan music. And so that's something we try to do often here at our house. And it's also pushed us into learning new musical instruments, which has been incredibly therapeutic and magical. So yeah, that's kind of the thing I really love about yoga, and I wanted to weave this into this conversation is like there's body, mind, spirit. Yoga can encompass all those things, and so just depending on which pieces of the practice you're choosing. Also, I want to recommend, if people aren't doing this already, and it sounds so simple and kind of like, well, yeah, duh, but getting out into nature, it's in line with what you're saying, connecting yourself into the web of life, disconnecting yourself from anything that's man-made and electronic and has a screen or buttons that we have to touch or dingy sounds that they make. And go for a walk, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes, even if you live in the city, as long as you're not under some kind of intense restriction, bundle up and get out there and breathe the fresh air, connect with the sounds and the essence of the natural world. It is the greatest and most ancient medicine that we have, and so I think a lot of us in these modern times have gotten so pulled away from that, especially if we live in a very urban space. And especially, as we've seen with these strict lockdown guidelines that have, been coming up and down throughout the world this year. So yeah, just any way to connect with the natural world. Go buy some houseplants if you need to, because if you can't go outside, hang out with those houseplants, get a goldfish. I don't know, it doesn't matter, right? It's anything that's natural that we can be with and feel the vibration of, and just really connect in with that. Like you said, the things that are, so much greater than we are. And I was saying, when we're in a state of fear or anxiety, we become very selfish. And it becomes like an us versus them thing. And that is not going to be helpful for anybody right now, So yeah, those are a couple of the key things for me that have definitely been a huge part of paving the way for me to feel as grounded and stable as I'm feeling. And, some days are better than others. Some days I just feel like, wow, what's going on? I can't even think about anything. And so I just focus on what's directly in front of me. And one more little tip. I don't know if this is a resilience practice, but maybe I'm finding the simple things are worth celebrating more than ever right now. I got out a sewing machine this week and I hemmed a bunch of curtains that I bought. And that was like this great accomplishment for me. And I was like, it was a little bit of creativity. It was a little bit challenging. I had to problem solve a little because I didn't really know how to use this sewing machine. It's not mine. And anyway, at the end of the day, we have these lovely window coverings, and I felt like I really did something useful for myself, and my partner. And, so if it's cooking a meal, cleaning the house, doing some laundry, getting out for a walk, meditating, reading a book that's useful, little things are big things right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say another element is we can acknowledge that we both have a personal sphere, you could say, and we're also part of the collective and the planet as a whole, or the global sphere. And often we can go between those elements, sometimes without even acknowledging it, right? So we could wake up in the middle of the collective angst of what's to come, or potential restrictions, or loss of business, loss of property, loss, and that angst can start to close in. And yes, we are part of the collective, but one practice that I found useful is to acknowledge that I'm a part of this collective and embody the response. So if I feel that angst around loss, then what have I cultivated? What have I learned in this lifetime about loss, about grief, about grieving, and how to grieve, and how to allow, and the space and the frequency of actual emptiness, like surrendering into emptiness, and then inviting a new sense of fullness, right? And that's, I love the devotion that you talked about, the devotional practices, that that's the like love, the bhakti, like comes, it arises out of the void, it arises out of emptiness or out of the no thing, like it can really just spark and come alive. So sometimes when we're clinging desperately to those few things that we still have, and I can't lose that, or I can't lose that, uh, sometimes where we're called, and I know in my life I've been called to let go of that grip and really go into this emptiness, which on one level felt devastating and scary and so really very grief inducing. But then what came through that was this birthing of a new like sense of fullness or vitality or love and appreciation and the capacity to give appreciation. Because if all our focus is on preventing loss or preventing death or preventing sickness, our energy isn't moving towards life and offering, right? And I think that's one thing that feels like something to just keep cultivating, is our capacity to live in the offering, even if it's just offering love to our own body, to our own home, to our own partner or family member or someone we run into. Even if they're wearing a mask and avoiding eye contact, we can still offer this frequency and vibration of love. But it's like that becomes a practice, right? That bhakti is like a practice to say, I commit to this and I commit to embodying the response, rather than being entrained to the, you could say, the problem or the concern or the powerlessness of not feeling in control of the direction that we're heading.
Thank you for that elaboration. That was really beautiful. Yeah, and this brings up another point with this whole topic. When we choose to do these things that are creating a space of expansion and love and peace and calm for ourselves, it is rippling out into the greater cosmic web. And whether we have any other humans that we're interacting with in person, this energy emanates out from us, whether it's through a phone call or an email or maybe a video. Lots of people are using video chatting software right now to talk with family and friends and clients, and or whether you're at the grocery store, like you said, whatever the interaction is on whatever level. It's kind of that living by example, modeling what calm inner peace and outer peace looks like or feels like to other people, because I would venture to say that the majority of people are not really experiencing that day to day right now. And there's a lot of panic, a lot of fear, and like so much chaos and confusion inside and outside for people, and just a lot of judgment and fear. And I'm trying my absolute very best to not dip into those frequencies. And it does happen once in a while. It's powerful. The pull is powerful. It's like a vortex, like a black hole, and there's this desire on some level of our shadow frequencies to engage with all those things. And so it really does require deep resilience and like a really, really strong foundation. And so, yeah, I think, what can we do right now? We can, go inward and ask ourselves which practices and thought patterns and tools we can adopt in our daily lives right now to be the best we can be, to be the most peaceful and calm we can be. And the more we can do that, the more our bodies and minds are healing, they're resting, they're strengthening, and they are more likely to be able to defend themselves against illness or disease in the world, regardless of what it's called or what that looks like, So yeah, I just would finish by saying, just the things we're sharing aren't the only things. I think they're pretty tangible, pretty achievable things. They don't cost anything. The greatest gifts and the greatest frequencies are priceless, and they're all things that we can do if we just decide that that's how we want to be. And yeah, I would say that this year has been the most challenging, strongest frequency I've felt probably my whole life. And I've been blown off center numerous times this year, but I just keep coming back. It's that commitment to coming back. It's that commitment to walking this path, walking your own individual path in the brightest and most beautiful, loving way possible.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah. And I would finish in saying, inviting each of us to really become aware when we are off, and knowing what we need when we're in those spaces, right? Say the other day, even on Saturday, I was walking through the forest and I was noticing, like, wow, there's this sadness and this cloudiness that's coming in my head. Like right away I could detect the presence of that change, just like we detect weather, like, oh, this is a change in the weather. And I really I actually just had a recording of someone that I listened to that helps to just really address and meet those elements from a frequency of love, light, presence, like just strengthening that. So in a moment when I felt a little bit underneath it, I can invite in someone else's voice as the facilitator, and in moments then I'll be the voice of the facilitator. But it's knowing what we can do for ourselves, what we can benefit by having someone else do for us or do with us, and really allocate that responsibility in a way that's empowering and honoring of us and other people. So we're not handing over our responsibility for our life, nor trying to take it all on and be like, I'm fine, I'm off, I don't need anyone, I'm resilient. So resilient doesn't mean separate and cut off from. It's unifying, uniting, becoming one with the web of life. And then as many resources, for a while my work, the theme was being completely resourced, and that was for quite a time of just bringing in those energetic, emotional, mental resources to strengthen us from within, so we can meet each other in a more dynamic space, right, of aliveness rather than deprivation and starvation and lack. And so there's so many ways to just cultivate that inner wealth, that inner bhakti, that devotional current of love for life itself, for being a part of life itself, and inviting then that love to flow through the web of humanity, and just seeing what can arise from that. Yeah, so just really inviting that of us all to notice when we're off, and then have practices in place to bring ourselves back to love, back to grace, back to where beauty always is. So thank you, Kristin, for joining me for this episode, and I'm sure we'll be back with more. And for everyone listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And more than anything, thank you for walking the path in your way. And we are all walking our path, being with what's showing up. And may we each find our way to more nourishment, care, love, honor, presence, and participation in this greater web of life that has resilience that is yet untapped in each of us. So may we find that and express it and live that. Thank you, everyone.